Welcome to the Working CEO podcast, where we share real advice for busy business leaders. No business school BS, no sugarcoating, just straight talk about how to get work done. We promised you straight talk, and we're not pulling any punches with our premiere episode of The Working CEO. We are talking about the end of jobs and how that impacts the top job, the working CEO. Joining us today is Jeff Wald, serial entrepreneur and the author of the Amazon best-selling book, The End of Jobs, The Rise of On-Demand Workers and Agile Corporations. Welcome, friends. I'm your co-host, Susanna Song, VP of Marketing at Highwire Networks. And I have with me the working CEO, of course, Mark Porter, CEO of Highwire Networks. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Susanna. How are you?
Good. This is awesome. I'm super excited about kicking off our podcast with Jeff Wald, the founder of WorkMarket, a software platform that enables companies to manage freelancers, which was acquired by ADP. Jeff has also founded several other technology companies, including Spinback, a social sharing platform, which was purchased by Salesforce. And if that's not enough, in his spare time, he is an active angel investor and startup advisor, as well as serving on numerous public and private boards of directors. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here with the two of you. Very much looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we're so glad to have you. And Mark, I know you have a relationship with Jeff. Tell us a little bit about how you guys met and how it came to be.
Well, I met Jeff through a relationship with WorkMarket that has, I guess you'd say evolved quite substantially over the years. It started kind of funny with a sales guy who wouldn't leave me alone and caught me. He called me every day. That guy, I still remember him. Shout out to Greg Slansky, one of the most diligent sales guys I met. And when he finally caught me when I accidentally picked up. I was trying to hang up a call and make another one, and he caught me. And I said, "You've got 60 seconds," because he caught me when I was very angry with a competitor of his. And in that 60 seconds, he convinced me to at least listen to him and get some other folks. So that's how our relationship sort of began, from those humble beginnings. And then over the years, as our company evolved, our needs changed drastically, and Jeff and I worked a lot more closely together towards the end of his tenure there, and he really was able to help us accomplish what we needed to do as a business, and became somebody that, as that relationship evolved, somebody that I count myself as fortunate enough to be able to call and talk about different things related to raising capital, different things about when it's time to exit the business, when it's time to double down, and then from there evolved into much more personal conversations over the last couple of years, as things are, I guess we could say, a little different than they've ever been before. Jeff, is that fair?
That is very fair. And Mark, a lot of my friendships start with people not returning my phone calls. That is actually how a lot of my relationships do begin. Mostly with women. I will admit, mostly women I've dated. They're just like, who is this person? But eventually, maybe I need to employ Greg Slansky in my personal life to be that persistent. But
we share that in common, because I did have to ask my wife to marry me multiple times, and I think she tried to break up with me at least 23. So
they're just plain hard to get, right?
No, she was I'm just hard to lose, I guess. So that's great. I think one of the greatest things about Jeff is that he's
Go on.
Incredibly humble. He's incredibly open about his own personal struggles, the struggles of growing a business, and we've talked a lot about that, because I think it's something that people often mistake about entrepreneurs in general, that you're making decisions every day. We all sort of seem very decisive, but at the end of the day, it can be I think you've discussed this publicly, it can be very isolating or lonely or confusing at times, right? So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting, being kind of the working CEO, to stay with our title here, you feel that you need to put everything on your shoulders and you need to get it done. and you need to be the hero, and you're there, and you have the title you have the responsibility you have because you're willing to do everything and anything to make it work. And that is certainly the burden I felt. That if I wasn't willing to be there 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, if I wasn't willing to never take a vacation, if I wasn't willing to go through every single wall, why would any of them, why would the team members, why would they do the things that I wasn't willing to do? And I had one of my board members say to me once, he said, "You don't need to be the hero every time." And that is how I felt, that I felt like I had to do it. And it takes a long time to understand that your job as a leader is not to have the answers. It's to empower your team to find the answer, right? The odds of me having the answer to every single problem are incredibly small. The odds of my team collectively getting to the best answer are very high. And so it took me a long time to get comfort with that. And a lot of it was driven, Mark, as you and I have talked about, by my own insecurities, my own desire to be proved right, and a host of other things. There were just a lot of evolutions that I wish I could take younger Jeff and say, it's going to be okay. You're going to fail a bunch of times. It's going to be okay. You're going to be wrong a bunch of times. It's going to be okay. But I don't, unfortunately, I don't get a chance to talk to younger Jeff, so I can talk to younger versions of Jeff.
Well, that's a really interesting point, and that's one of the things when some people have asked me, when the business started to scale, right, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you accomplish that scale, and the when part is easy. It's when I realized I wasn't that important or that good, and that I started to let other people do what they do best, and that comes and goes, right? It's hard when you see other people around you making mistakes that you can probably save some time or you might do differently, and it's hard to sometimes check that and say, you know what, maybe they're right, maybe it will work, maybe what I know is going to work isn't actually going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I believe it's going to work, and you believe so strongly in yourself. When I started letting them do those things and bring those solutions, that was probably the biggest inflection point for us. And then we just had one recently, I would say, and Susanna was actually there, where during our annual leadership meeting, when we go through a very facilitated process, and when the leader went through what we call the identify, discuss, and solve portion of the meeting, and we went through the issues, I looked at the board, and there was, I don't know, 30 issues up there that needed to be worked through in the afternoon. And rather than start to tackle them, I said, most of these are issues, guys, that you should be dealing with in your leadership team groups, in your management groups, and pushing these issues close down to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, for our facilitator, who this is his third annual meeting with us, he's also, I'm lucky and count myself fortunate to have him on our board. Afterwards, he said that was one of the biggest leaps he saw us take as a team, when I said, these aren't strategic discussions, these are practical things you guys have to go and solve. And I think that's again, like you, Susanna asked me in the trailer for this what I would do differently, or what I would tell my younger self, and it's shut up and listen more. So there's answers out there that are probably better than what you're thinking of.
Very true. Very true. And I think we were both fortunate to have board members that were able to notice those things and push us into directions with the basic premise of you don't scale. If you everything's got to go
Right.
through you, if everything answer has to come through you, you won't be able to build a big business. It's just you as a person do not scale.
That's a really key point, Jeff. So when you look at, and we're going through this now as we move into the public arena and building an independent board. So I'm going through the same process, but I'd love to hear your insights on when you're at those early stages. I don't know about you, and you've had a lot of PE and VC investment over
Mm-hmm.
the years, so you probably are sort of forced into having a board. But in those early stages before that, um, I didn't have a formal board. I usually had advisors or
Mm-hmm.
friends and confidants that were close enough that could give me advice. What do you think about at what point is it important for people to start seeking those connections?
It's a great question, Mark. There's no answer, right? There's no prescriptive at this point thou shall. What I would say is this: advice is really difficult to give because advice has to have context to it. if you and I speak and we haven't spoken about your business in a year, and you say, "Hey, what should I do about this?" All I'm going to be able to do is parrot back what you've just told me. I don't know anything, right? I don't know all the nuances and things of that. And so whatever advice I give will just be some blindingly obvious thing. And we get off the phone, you're going to go, "Yeah, thanks for that great insight, idiot. Obviously, I thought of that." And so I always tell people, "Yeah, look, I can't give you advice. I can experience share." And this is all going to come back to this board notion, which is the sooner you can get people that on a regular cadence, monthly, quarterly, somewhere in between the two, are getting updates on your business or reading through the documents. That way, when you get to these big strategic questions where you actually need some people's advice, they will have been bought in enough to actually give you good advice. And so, whenever you get to that point where you can part with either equity or some sort of cash comp, because you have to compensate these people for their time, that's when you are going to start getting the benefits of a board outside of the governance issues that a board can provide when you start having a more dispersed shareholders base.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I participated a lot of times in the early days and those various types of board setups where you're dealing with other CEOs, et cetera. And I think you hit a good concept. There's a lot of good experience sharing that happens in those settings and things that you might take away a notion here or there. But I don't know that you ever get that same quality of, these are the real issues, challenging your thought process in a way that makes sense in the context of running and growing your business, right? And that's the key piece that I take. I'm really, our board today, I think, is our meetings are incredibly productive, and it's one of the things that I wish I'd done a better job of at an earlier stage. So I think that's good advice for every entrepreneur is as soon as you can start forming that and
Yeah,
get advice on getting those agreements right, and make sure you protect those board members with the right types of insurance from any liability that they
completely.
may incur.
I'll tell you this quick story. So the first public company board I was on, I got elected as a part of a proxy contest, meaning management and the existing board were fighting against my election to the board. I got elected, though. It was literally a scene out of Wall Street. Like at the shareholder meeting, there were speeches given, and the last few
Oh
votes
no.
determined who won. It was sick, man. It was super cool. Like I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. So the CEO comes over to me. There were two of us that were nominated by this, insurgent group, if you will, and I got elected. The other person didn't. He came over, and said, "Jeff, you've been elected to the board, and so we will duly get you the appropriate information," and blah blah blah. And I said to him, I said, "Look, I know you don't want me here. I know you're losing a guy with 40 years of experience in this particular industry. You're getting a guy with only at the time 15 years of total business experience, none of it in your industry. But I'll promise you this: I will not talk at the board meetings until I know as much as the other board members." He said, "That's very kind of you," and whatever, because activists, people that raise proxy contests, are known for kind of pounding the table and yelling and screaming. I said, that's not me. I will give you a thought when I have data and some context to express my thoughts. So he sent me all the materials, and I read everything. We had the first board meeting, maybe a month later. I flew down a day early and took plant tours, and I really got to know this particular operating location and some of the people. And we started the first board meeting, and at lunch, first break, he comes to me and he's like, "So, what do you think?" I said, "I think I'm ready to talk." He said, "Well, I thought you were going to talk for 3 or 4 meetings." I said, "No, no, no. I said I wouldn't talk until I knew as much as the rest of your board as much as your other board members. I thought that would take me 3 or 4 meetings, but it is painfully apparent to me that the rest of the people at this table do not know what you do. They don't know. They've been on their phones and they are not paying attention. And I will tell you that about within the next 2 years, almost everyone on that board, everyone except for one, is now off that board."
Hmm.
And so the point being is that it takes time to really spend to do those duties of care and duties of loyalty context for public companies. You have to spend the time. You have to be informed in order to be able to give any advice on the strategic issues or make decisions, which boards obviously have to do at times. But it is shocking to me how many board members don't take that experience, don't take that responsibility as seriously as they should.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things that I love to help other entrepreneurs, or I get a lot of questions from smaller companies, and I'm very active with the incubator program here at the local high school, and I think I've shared
Great.
with you some things going on in there that from time to time I've seen some amazing things come out of these high school kids, amazing ideas. One of which I'm waiting for a couple of them to get a little farther down the road in college, and really excited to jump in with them and help them launch their idea, because it's just phenomenal and it's great for other students and has some social responsibility aspects and stuff. But it does take a lot of time and a lot of attention. And you hit on something ironically about, being on their phones and meetings and things like that. I actually just sent out this morning. I was researching something with the high school actually where my kids go about social media, and I had an engagement with the principal last week about kids and posting, and he didn't understand it. And made me realize he didn't understand how all of it worked. Made me realize that boy, if our administration doesn't know how all it works, they don't maybe fully, they understand the damage, but they don't know how to combat it. We got into a discussion, and I was researching some stuff for him today, and I was looking up some stuff from Simon Sinek and other folks. And I actually sent out an email to my team as I was looking about this in the context of kids and families and all that we will absolutely positively no longer allow cell phones. I have distinctive rings for my kids. So in the event that I get a text from a kid, I said, I advise you guys to do the same. Those need to be looked at. But short of that, we will be engaged with each other. We will not be on our cell phones, because we owe it to each other. And we can probably also shorten the quality of our own meetings. We shorten the time of them. And the default is 30 minutes, 45 should be the longest we take if we're all engaged and paying attention, with the exception of our Monday meetings that have a more rigid cadence. I think that's something that's plaguing all businesses today,
100%.
at all levels. Any thoughts on that?
We had the WorkMarket meeting rules, and these were big. They're big posters in every single conference room at WorkMarket,
And in the bathroom,
all of our offices, and in the bathroom.
Yes.
You have been in our bathrooms.
Yes.
And look, there could not be a meeting longer than 30 minutes at that company without my approval, because everything can be done in 30 minutes. You could not have a device, and you could be taking notes on your computer, but you could not do anything unless it was, of course, a personal emergency or a client emergency. Then by all means, there had to be a specific goal for the meeting, and there had to be a specific agenda for the meeting. We had to end 5 minutes before the end and say, all right, what are our next steps and action items? All these things need to happen, because I might, you've got millions of dollars of payroll being tied up in these meetings as time goes by. And so it became a super, super important thing for us. And actually, one of the WorkMarket engineers spent about 2 years building, after he left WorkMarket, building a whole company around this called Sonero, which is very focused on meeting efficiency and making sure that there are goals and action items and next steps and all these other things. And he came to me after spending 2 years writing code, being like, this is what I built. I was like, this is the WorkMarket meeting rules. He's like, I know. That's amazing.
I've recently seen a demo of it. I actually liked
it.
I liked it quite a bit. He's meeting with our COO, and it's actually an interesting thing. None of this planned, by the way, the plug for them, but it's actually one of the things that was sparking some after that conversation, and I kind of gave him a use case, two of them that I think are really critical in the way we have meetings with customers and interact with customers in planning sessions for projects, and even more importantly in scoping sessions for projects, where so much can be lost in the shuffle of the inefficiency of a meeting, the not paying attention, the answering questions half-heartedly. At least you can come out with those notes, even if the engagement's not there. It's a very, very useful platform.
There is no reason at this point in the technological evolution that we get to witness and be a part of for things to slip through the cracks. There's just no reason for it, right? There's no, hey, what did we say about that? I don't know what we said about it, but here's exactly what we said about it. But it gets back to this general point of, as the CEO, how do you drive this discipline throughout your organization to make sure everybody is rowing in the same direction? I was always told as a startup CEO, and I wouldn't pretend that this applies to, every CEO, that my job was to set the direction, hire the team, and raise the money, right? Because if I run out of money, game over.
Mhm.
No more company. And obviously the team is the most important thing, but I need to set that direction. I need to give them that North Star, and I want to make sure they're all rowing in the same direction because to our point earlier, right? If I am very confident as to what that North Star is, and obviously I'm going to listen to my team and customers in the market, but if I can get the entire company moving in the right direction where I'm not the one going and on every sales call and on everything, if I've got, in the case of WorkMarket, hundreds of people rowing that boat in that direction, we're going to get there much faster. And we were fortunate that we did.
I think that's a really good description. I had somebody, sort of a chance encounter, a guy described to me, and I think this is definitely not my quote, and I don't know exactly where to attribute it, but I believe it was a former CEO of Quaker Oats that he shared with me, shared with him, and he said his job was to, as the CEO, was to see the light, to describe the light, and inspire others to follow it. And it's that same concept, right? And I've seen others. We talk here about vectoring. If you know vectors in physics, even just being slightly misvectored and going really fast in the wrong direction pulls at the core, right, and starts
Completely.
tearing away from the mission. So it's so essential that everybody's going to that same North Star as you describe it. We talk about it as our vision traction organizer as part of the EOS system we use. And it's a great system. It's not rocket science or anything like that. It's just a way to make sure that every team is having a meeting that is the exact same format. And now there's software, to your point, there's software that facilitates those, that actually gathers those notes and allows you to refer back to the weekly notes, the quarterly notes, building your rocks and making sure that when the leadership team sets our quarterly rocks, that they then go out and sit with their team, and their team builds quarterly rocks around supporting the ones that we've set for ourselves so that everybody's moving in that same direction. I would say to any entrepreneur, as you hire people, culture to me is critical. Are they going to fit into the pace of play, the sort of direction you want to go, and making sure that they understand clearly where we are going as an organization, and come up with ways that they can help fit. So
I will tell you that during the pandemic, as a labor market expert, for those just listening and not watching, I'm air quoting my own expertness. I got a lot of phone calls. All right, how do we run distributed teams? Because look, WorkMarket helps kind of usher in on-demand labor in a corporate setting. And so as people thought about remote work and different team structures, I got a lot of phone calls. And the first thing I'd always say is, do you have a well-defined culture within your company? Do you have a culture document that codifies who you are, why you're here, where you're going, what you stand for, and all the policies and procedures that support that? And a lot of people will be like, well, no, but we know what our culture is. I was like, no. If you say everybody knows what your culture is, I am 100% sure that nobody knows what your culture is. You need to have it down. They need to see it. You need to present it at every meeting, who we are, why we're here, where we're going. And if you can do that, that's the glue that binds the team together. And then it doesn't matter if that team is all in the same office. It doesn't matter if that team are all full-time employees. It doesn't matter if some people are working remotely and some people are part-time and some people are in other countries and some people are freelance. That won't matter because they'll all understand who we are, why we're here, and where we're going, that North Star. And if you can do that, to your point about culture, all you're doing is increasing your probability you're going to get there. I'm not saying that these are, 100% guaranteed methods to get there. All we can do as CEOs is increase the probability that we're going to get to the outcome we want.
That's absolutely brilliant. And one of our customers shared this with me about the way we worked in relation to explaining to one of his peers why things we did worked better than others, and who were using your software and your platform to do similar things, right? And he talked about the connective tissues, and he said it's if you have the systems, the documentation, the processes, and everybody understands them, it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it, and how ultimately you connect person to person through this very elaborate web of people, getting information from a customer through a business partner into our organization, out to the field. And one of your former partners helped me draw something one time. There's 25, 30 different things that have to happen between the person who wants the work done and the person who is doing the work, and those connective tissues, and then doing it in such a way that supports that mission, that culture, the desired outcome and the objective for that customer. Because this man or woman is out here at the site doing a task theoretically, but if they're doing it in such a way that they understand that the person they're doing it for has an actual problem and you're solving the problem, and it's your goal to make it the best experience possible, that's a whole different level of delivery, right? And having all those things documented is the only way to do it, which is hard for me because patience isn't exactly my strongest suit. But I keep seeing this term, the post-work economy, the post-work world. People are talking about with we got the pandemic. What's your thoughts on what's next?
Well, I'll tell you this, and this was the whole point of me writing a book, which is, for me, everything is evidence-based, and I want to be very data-driven. And the evidence and data points we have in the world of work are the history of work, how companies and workers have interacted over multiple industrial revolutions with that supply and demand balance. We have the data as to really what's possible in terms of the amount of data we can derive on the economy. And then last, how companies actually engage labor. It's one thing to say, oh, everyone should do this. Okay, but what's really happening as the C-suite gets together to discuss how we want to do labor force transformation or labor resource planning? And if you understand those, talk a lot about this post-work economy. They're like, oh, people have reassessed what life means because of the pandemic. I'm like, maybe. People talk about the Great Resignation. Oh, everyone's doing something different. I'm like, maybe. And that is where I'm at right now with this, Mark, is that maybe they'll quit because they are valuing work differently because of a host of things that are maybe going on with different policy initiatives around the social safety net and things like that. Maybe. But if I were to tell you that we had 4.4 million people quit in October, and I were to say if that trend were to continue, we would have 46 million people that quit in all of 2021. You might go, wow, that's a lot. But if the trends from 2018, 2019 were followed, in 2020, we would have had about 42 million people that left their jobs. But we didn't in 2020 because of the pandemic. A lot of people that would have quit didn't. And so we ended up with only about 36 million people. Well, I think they were maybe held up in their homes and afraid to like change jobs because they were just so happy they had a job. I would argue that the Great Resignation right now should just be called the catch-up resignation, because those 46 million people would be about 6 million people more than we would have thought would have quit during a normal year of 2021, and we had 6 million fewer quits in 2020. So we're just catching up. The point being, if we start looking at the data, we start to maybe say, well, has there been a structural change in the way the world works, meaning a post-work world, or are these just the continued gyrations as we kind of get back to a normal from COVID? And that is what the data and history tells me right now. But that being said, we should have this conversation in Q2 of 2022, because by then, a lot of supply chain issues, a lot of issues in the labor force, like the 5 million missing workers, a lot of that would have gone through the system. And if it hasn't by then, now we have a real data case to be made that there are structural changes that have occurred in the labor force. And then we can start putting together a view on the world of work and how it's structurally changed.
Well, that's, as always, your insight is brilliant. And Susanna, that points to one of my favorite topics with the team is lag, right? When you look at systems, especially one as complex as the workforce in the United States, globally, et cetera, and these are all systems, make no mistake about that, right? When you look at lag, it's rarely, if ever, accounted for in the current conversation, and it often creates horrifically bad decision making if you're not accounting for that sort of lag. And I see the statistics and the numbers all the time, this sort of, these pandemic driven numbers, or however you want to paint it. It is very interesting to me to look at how much of this is lag? How much of this is just because of disruption and upheaval? It can be deceiving just based on the fact that you have an entire generation of workers who's already aging out of the workforce in general, right? So that number of retirees is bigger. We have real problems in the trades in that the younger generations are not entering the trades, not entering some of these high paying, skilled labor jobs, but they are manual labor and maybe deemed not worthy. These are, these jobs are $100,000 a year plus jobs in a lot of markets, and take years to be masters of. So we've got challenges that were out there. And I think that's a very interesting theory, Jeff, because I could easily see that. I know personally a lot of people that delayed retiring because they could, or because they were forced remote for the first time in their life. Their job was a little easier and their quality of life was a lot higher. So why quit now, right? Was kind of the mantra. And as some of them are contemplating what's next, they look at maybe the last 18, 24 months as sort of the icing on the cake, and maybe they'll bow out from here. But it's interesting, and I do look forward to seeing what the future holds there. So I would be remiss if we didn't at least get mentioned. We've mentioned the job. I have a copy of it here in the end of jobs. I find it fascinating. I find it a good read because I love to get the opinions of others in there, and you weave a lot of, and there's some impressive people that you spent time with, as you wrote the book. So I'd like to close with asking sort of the one thing, right? A lot of meetings when I get confused or frustrated, when there's a lot going on or conflating of issues, I said, let's just kind of boil this down to one thing. Like, what is the one thing we're talking about? What's the one thing that, if you're talking to somebody who's struggling to struggle, because God knows there are plenty when you're getting a business off the ground, what's the one thing that you might tell somebody that could keep them going?
I would tell them that my first business failed miserably and left me bankrupt, left me depressed. And it took me a long time to realize how many hands there were reaching out to help pull me up. And if I wished that I had looked for those hands earlier. And so I would tell them, look for all those hands, because there are countless people in your professional circles and your social circles and different groups that are willing to help out as they can. And I will tell you, building businesses is hard, but it doesn't need to be as hard as sometimes we make it be on ourselves. And so reach out for those hands, because there are a lot of hands looking to help you take that step up.
That's wise advice, because they are always there by hook or by crook, by grace, by luck, by whatever you want to call it, karma. I've been fortunate enough to find my way to people like you in life, and have other people who I have no idea why they helped me, literally no idea, but they did, and they're always there. Sometimes I think we might be willfully blind to them at times, but that's great advice, Jeff. So I certainly appreciate it. I echo your mom's review in the foreword of your book, the best book ever written on any topic ever. So pretty strong endorsement right there. I'm not sure if she has a bias or not, but it's good advice.
Slight bias. Yeah.
Well, as always, brother, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us, and I know I'm better for spending a little time with you today, which is the usual.
Always a pleasure spending any time I can with the Highwire team, and obviously with you, Mark.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you to our guest, Jeff Wald. Make sure you check out his book, and some great advice given there. Be sure to join us for our next episode, The Obsession with Seven Figures, how a small business owner turned IT sales and marketing influencer is helping MSPs get rich. Until next time, I'm Susanna Song.
And I'm Mark Porter.
And you're listening to The Working CEO. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of The Working CEO. Remember, whether your collar is blue or white, roll up your sleeves and let's get real. The Working CEO is made possible by Highwire Networks, a leading global provider of technical, professional, electrical, and managed cybersecurity services, serving businesses in more than 180 countries. To learn more, visit highwirenetworks.com.